I'm just inviting. Hi, hi, hi.
Hey girl, how are you?
Okay, yeah, it is what it is.
It is what it is. Look, I've got a row of stuffed animals as an audience today. Iris left for me, so or my daughter. But anyways,
And I am wearing I think I told you about this is the
you
bra
did. I
about
want.
that they're three for $25 and they're 100% cotton.
I'm not even wearing a bra.
They're amazing. They're teenage girl training bras, which is like,
It
but
works.
I had this like beauty influencer that I follow that was like, I know this is so embarrassing, but these are the only 100% unstructured cotton
I
bras.
love it. It's so cute. It's like little bralette. Like
And,
it's
and the reviews are all like women our age being like, why are these the only people that are making cotton, casual, affordable bras?
right. I mean, you'd think these people would get it together by now,
I love
but they look great on you.
what was the text that you sent me last night where you were like, it was a meme and it was like, it's so hard carrying all of this trauma and these big jugs.
I was like, all I am is a vessel for pain and trauma and big tits.
It's, I know, I like was,
For the greatest joy and happiness and the deepest pain and trauma.
yeah, yeah. Like talking to my stepmom about you the other day. I was saying that I was like, yeah, like she already, I think, is like every woman's worst nightmare, which is like blonde and like small with like great hair. And I'm like, and
You put me too high.
me. Just how I feel sometimes. I'm like,
It is what it is. Okay, keep
women
going.
not like you more when you have great boobs.
Stop it. Stop, please.
When you got yours done, did you notice a marked difference in the way people treated you?
I would say, see, I think this is where women gaslight themselves, right? Like,
Yeah.
because I would say, like, my heart, like, what I want to say is no, like, no, of course not. Like, but I do think that there what, like, yeah, like, definitely, yeah, I would say, yep.
Yeah. I mean, oh, okay. Yeah. So we have someone else who, oh
Yes, see, you get it. They get it.
my gosh, I'm like trying to find like something that, oh my God, that is so evil. Look how evil this is. Oh, that's
Ooh.
so rude. That is so transphobic. It's such okay. Like at least something that like makes me evens everything a little bit here. Fucking Jesus.
All right, you're too worried about it. You look amazing. Boobs!
Okay.
Everybody loves boobs.
Thank you everyone for being here for our jugs. Yeah, boobs make a difference. Okay, Faye Chef,
True.
thank you so much for being here. Tell us your name, first of all. Also, I wanted to say hi to my wonderful, sweet friend, Christopher, who shot his album artwork this last week. Congrats. Fab. Thank you all for being here. Okay, so as many of you might have seen from the post that we put up earlier this week, we are going to be trying to put up those announcement posts earlier in the week. That was my bad this week. We're still trying to like get the kinks worked out on some of the like scheduling and stuff here. Hi,
We're
Rach.
doing it. We're doing it though. We're figuring it out. We're
Uh,
just two humans trying to figure it out.
but as you all may have seen, we're trying to create a forum with these Sunday chats, which we'll be having every Sunday at 12 Pacific
Pacific,
1
one Mountain,
and then
two,
2 Eastern time.
no, two Central, and then
Yeah,
four East.
yeah,
Three, sorry.
for having some
Time zones are not our thing.
not my known. Um, But every month we're going to have a different topic that we'll be addressing. This month we are talking about rape culture and the ways that it impacts women, both cis and trans, and then also the generational trauma of rape culture, where Vinay, as a mother of children, like 2 kids, we'll be talking specifically about how she is grappling with that educational aspect of like how to talk to yourself and your children about like these kind of societal institutions that contribute to this perseveration of rape culture. And then as a professional dominatrix, I'll be talking about my perspective and how so much of BDSM and kink is informed by radical consent culture, and how in the intersection of those two things we find solutions as women, both cis and trans, and our allies who we love when you join us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
To solve for this for future generations and also in our own lives. You know, how do we, as women in our relationships, especially our relationships with men, first of all, like stand up for ourselves, but second of all, make space and opportunities for education that inform how men treat us and the other women in their lives in regards to consent and sexuality.
And I think also maybe exploring a little bit of the ways that as women, you know, I mean, we're all part of this society that is collective, right? I think that it can be really easy to fall into reinforcing those types of structures, right? And how we can try to avoid that.
Yeah. So do you want to introduce this week's topic?
Yes, look, I have notes. Week 1. The intersections of safety, motherhood, trans identity, and threats of violence. Here we go. But I think your introduction was a perfect way to start it out, because I think it really, and we have a few different like topics that we'll get into, but like there is so much more that we have in common with each other, me as a mother of 2 and you as a trans woman dominatrix, like that we have a lot more in common than we do that's different in our experience, in our life experience. So I think it's important to talk about this stuff, and I'm excited.
Yeah. When we were like looking at what topics might look like, the reason why we started with this is because so much of what we want to focus on in this project as it continues to evolve is intersectionality and how we build these like bridges of support and community between different kinds of women. You know, that's across like trans and cis, that's different racial disambiguations, that's women who come from different socioeconomic backgrounds. Ultimately, like there is no enemy here, that if we're to be fighting against the oppressor, that oppressor is simultaneously patriarchy and classism, I think. And so much of like what informs violence against women is those two things and the ways in which they interact with each other in society. And I think that could be a place for us to start today, is talking about how both you and I at various points in our life have been in positions of both like privilege and affluence, especially like by nature of our families, but that also have been in radical poverty. You know, there have been periods of both you and I's lives where we were living in like subsidized housing, where we were in relationships where, you know, we were
Or living in other people's housing.
jobs, or we were homeless. And I think that has, at least for me, and I won't speak for you, but given me such a valuable perspective into like why we see certain demographics of women experience increased levels of violence. And I think that so much of that is specific to our socioeconomic positioning.
Yes, I think unfortunately that is definitely the case, because when you have money, you can pay to avoid those things, right? Whereas people that don't have access to resources like that, they only have what's available, right? Which can be lacking in quality.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's. I think it makes sense that during the periods of our life where we were subjected to, I think, some of the greatest acts of like physical and sexual violence were also when we were the most detached from our families and by proxy their privilege, and simultaneously we're also the most removed from the safety that resources offer people, especially women. I think that's why we see so many women who just like jump into these marriages where they're miserable, because at least being miserable with the promise of safety feels,
At least you can buy yourself something nice.
at least you can buy yourself something.
You know what I mean? Like I think there's a lot of women out there that are substituting love with material things or stuff that, external things, because they're not getting it at home.
Yeah.
And they justify that by saying, well, but my husband is providing this for me. So they kind of attach it to their husband in a way where they make it like, well, he's providing me the money to buy this for myself, so he loves me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting this because he loves me,
Yeah.
right? When I think that's, it's just sad.
Well, you were talking about this earlier today, and I think maybe this is a perfect opportunity to, our bestie just jumped in, to talk about uh, this friend of mine that I had a falling out with recently, where I had a friend who brought to my attention the fact that her husband had invested in her company a very large amount of money, like 5 digits.
Mm-hmm.
But the condition was that in order to secure that investment, she had to allow him to have anal sex with her, despite the fact that she didn't want to have anal sex. And and she and I had this falling out, like part of what I then felt this permission to say was not just to her how I had felt about some of the ways that she had treated me, but also finally to her husband about some of the ways he had treated her. Because during the friendship, it was not my place. She had told me like not to say anything to him.
Mm-hmm.
When the friendship fell apart, I was like, I feel a moral obligation to tell him that I feel like him purchasing his wife's body from her for his usage,
And for his money, for to
his money,
Mhm.
is assault.
It is.
It's
It's
coercion.
coercion.
That is assault.
It is. It is. It 100% is. And it's so sad that as women, it's so easy when we have been so conditioned to try to justify that behavior in men and try to make sense of it, because how else can you live in a world that treats you that way?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's really, I think a lot of stuff like that happens way more than people are willing to admit.
Yeah. I seeing our friend Rachel in the chat. Thank you so much for contributing, Rachel, first of all. Um, I just want to share this comment that
Yeah.
offered. Strangely, I feel like it all filtered down to not having a good mom that made me have to do a 180 in my own life. Whoa.
Well, I actually think that this is a perfect segue into our first little section
Great.
of, and I,
Thank
and
you.
I be,
So real.
well, and I think I really appreciate, I think it's Rachel. I appreciate Rachel for saying that, because my first topic is to talk about the protector paradox, which is, and I'd be curious if this is like similar to your experience, Rachel, but like basically what, from my understanding, is the protector paradox is the idea that like you want, as a mom or a caretaker, wanting to protect your kids from harm, um, while simultaneously in that effort causing more harm than they would have otherwise incurred, right? If they would have just, and I think it just speaks to the way, like, as parents, like, I know for me, like, parents want to protect your kids. Like, you don't want your kids to go through hard things. It's hard, it's not fun to see your kids struggle and go through things that are hard. But by removing that experience from them, like that they can get through hard things and that they will be okay, it really is doing them a disservice in the long run. And it's not allowing them to grow as humans, to know that they're resilient, right? And I think, like, for me, as a kid, growing up in a house that was very religious, very high control parenting, I would say helicopter parenting would be, I think, an accurate description. Um, it made me feel, it was so much anxiety that I didn't even, that was such a constant state for me of living in that anxiety that I didn't even realize that I was anxious. Right. And then not being able to relax in a home where I felt like somebody was always watching me, or waiting to tell me what I was doing wrong, or what I needed to do differently. Like, that's why I would read books so much, is because people would leave me alone if I was reading,
Yeah.
you know?
I want to call out like what Rachel has once again contributed. Thank you so much, Rachel, for all of these perspectives that you're offering.
Too
Uh,
young.
she was more too young and too selfish. And I think that that's something that both you and I have discussed at length about our own mothers. And to your point, this like protector paradox, where it's like, I feel like my mom protected me in a lot of ways from what she viewed to be sins I might commit
Mm.
by nature of being very like focused
Or
on.
protected herself from how your actions reflected on her.
Yes, it was more so about how exactly the perception of like my sins, and not so much about like how men's sins would like impact me as a child who, you know, inevitably went on to experience CSA. And I look back on a lot of that, and I ask myself, like, how did my mom justify, first of all, being like so hyper attentive in these ways that were almost unimportant,
Right.
but then being almost intentionally removed from these like signs and symptoms and situations where like it was so obvious that sexual exploitation was taking place. And I think like being both trans and also like beginning at that time to start internalizing some of the messaging that I subconsciously was receiving about women and like how women are supposed to behave and interact in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, despite the fact that like I maybe could or should have internalized some of the messaging that is directed towards men, where it's like, you know, talking very clearly about how like, okay, you're supposed to defend yourself, or how you're supposed to uh, move through the world with like a certain level of like combativeness in order to insulate yourself from other people's harm. I instead, like, as I'm experiencing this sexual violence by the hands of like a man in our church who was older than me, I'm sitting there asking myself, like, well, is this, do I deserve this? Is this my role? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Because this powerful man is telling me that this is okay and that I should be doing this. And the only thing that I'm being told at home by my mother specifically is that, like, I need to be focused on not sinning. But I'm now having an ecclesiastical leader in my church and somebody who is a priesthood leader telling me that it's not a sin because he's telling me it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wanted to go back to Rachel's comments again, because she said this thing, she said very critical, which I just, like, to me, like, that is like a weird triggering word for me, because like that's like kind of a thing in my family, like, where we always are like, God, they're so critical. Like, and it's interesting how people project like how critical they think other people are when they are so critical. Like, but like, my I think I think it's so interesting that I think, okay, as a mom, I think I've gained a lot of perspective on how much pressure there is on moms to have their kids perform in a certain type of way, right? And that if those kids don't do the socially acceptable things, they it's not a reflection necessarily on the kids, right? It's the mom. It's their parents' fault, right? And so I think what happens a lot of times with moms, and at least with my mom, is this they go into like, and I think we're also as women conditioned to fix things, right? And we go in, my mom would go into this fixer mode that was like, I can't let you do this because like I see it so clearly as a mistake and you're so wrong. Like I can't even let you explore anything, like anything at all to do with whatever, you know? And I think it's interesting that they can externalize that criticism onto us, like as their kids, but couldn't do the self-reflection necessary to see how the society being critical of them as a mother was impacting the choices they were making as a mom towards their kids,
Agree.
you know, and making them treat their kids like objects or things to perform than like circus animals, more than real humans that are learning and that need support and need empathy and need mirroring, you know?
And to go and please, like, first of all, I just want to
Well,
like,
and I think being busy, like what she said, sorry, last thing, but I think being busy is a it's a convenient excuse.
I was literally going to just say that exact same thing. So I'm so glad that both of you are contributing that. And I wanted to say, like, to anybody watching this, first of all, like Rachel, thank you so much for contributing so much. That is really ultimately what we want from the space, for it to feel like a conversation between all of us about these issues. Because I agree with both of you. I think that the way that I experienced it in my home is my mom was so hyper focused on ignoring these like very obvious symptoms of like me being trans and me being queer,
Mm-hmm.
because of how closely we align sexual identity, gender identity with
Mm-hmm.
sex and sexuality themselves. I think that my mom was so focused on ignoring these like symptoms of my like gender and my sexuality that she didn't realize that like simultaneously those symptoms and like what I was like trying to show her, like these like being upset, was because of the ways in which my gender and sexuality were being exploited.
Well, and I think it also goes to show with the tendency to ignore, like if I because I think she probably felt that if she did acknowledge it, that by acknowledging it, it would make it real,
Get real. Yeah.
and then it would cause you to like explore it further. But if she ignores it and doesn't say anything, then maybe she'll gaslight you enough that you'll forget.
Back to this idea of like perception, if it becomes real for her, then it becomes real for everybody else. And then, as you were saying, the failure then is on her shoulders. If
Right.
this is happening, like, oh, if my child really is being exploited, if like being upset and like showing these different symptoms of like identity and, variance identity or whatever, if those surface in a way that like make me have to identify them as being real, then I simultaneously have to take accountability for them being real. And if I have to take that accountability for them being real, in what was my role in those things being and becoming real?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think that's, first of all, back to Rachel's comments. I 100% agree. Give kids a break, man. Like, they are literally, like, I remember as a kid, like, feeling like I was such a piece of crap because, like, I could never meet the expectations that were set for me because it's like they expected us as children to act like mini adults. And I feel like, of course, their expectation was gonna never be met because it's unrealistic. And it's like we just need to understand that like we all are trying to figure it out. Like we're all learning and we're all on our own like life path and having our own experiences. That like I just think it's so crazy that our parents, yeah, just let kids be kids. They have the rest of their lives to be adults and to have the world shit on them. Okay.
Yeah, like I think that is hard. I think especially as a mom, and as a mom that's like brought under so much scrutiny, um, I can't imagine what it must feel like and look like to like see that your child's ability to be a kid is like being robbed from them in some capacity. I'd like to give our mothers the benefit of the doubt in assuming that like, well, I wish that they had been able to look past that and like figure out, okay, so how do I get the kid back to this ability and like this place where they can feel like a child?
Mm-hmm.
We're then like so focused on being like, no, like instead I'm going to try and like course correct you as an individual, and
Mm-hmm.
like it's time to get back to being a kid when ultimately it's someone else's interference in as much that is causing you.
Well, and I wrote this down. It's so funny that you said that because I literally wrote down teaching versus controlling. Right. And I think that's a big, and my parents would, I have a hard time with the word teaching because my parents would use that words a lot. Like, we're just teaching you. And I was like, I don't want to, you can't teach me anything because I don't want to listen to you. Like, you know, but it's like, you, you can teach all you want, but you can't control the outcome. You have to let go and let kids make mistakes and figure it out. And then be there for them when things go wrong. And I just think like that's the thing, like everybody's trying to so hard to make sure nothing ever goes wrong. But that's not real life. Life goes wrong all the time. Obviously, look at
Yeah.
but it can go right, and that's why we need each other. That's why we need that support, and that's why I'm so grateful that we're doing this because I think we're kind of trying to create like a little bit of a digital version of that. Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, and I think like as I was preparing
We
for,
can talk about, I guess, all that to say, last thing, sorry. We can talk about it. We can throw ideas back and forth. But at the end of the day, like anybody that's listening is going to make the choices that they're going to make. And we don't like judge anybody for the choices that they make because we don't know all the things leading up to those decisions and why and like what. And I think it's people make decisions for, especially women, for valid reasons. And like, we're not here to try to control the outcome. We're just trying to start a discussion. And so that we can feel like we're not crazy. Okay, sorry. Sorry, I cut you off. I'm so sorry.
I was just going to say, like, as I was preparing for this discussion, the thing that I kept going back to is just like how in the dungeon, I find it so often like mirrors the sandbox and how like these as I've like continued to progress in this career, seeing the ways in which like adults utilize the dungeon in the way that like we very much did the playground or the sandbox as kids, where it's like this
Mm-hmm.
design for play and for experimentation and also for mistakes, you know, like I think like such an intrinsic part of being a child is understanding that like you're going to be introduced to new games where you may not know the rules, and other people are there to like help you understand the rules and to teach you how to play the game. Or you know, like you may be acting like selfishly on the playground and like not paying attention to like the needs of other people, and like other kids will be the first people to remind you like, hey, you know, like you
Yes. Yeah. Share.
are. And I found like, I mean, I work largely with men, obviously, as a dominatrix, and I've just found that like specifically with men, my role in the dungeon is to inform a lot of that kind of like childlike education, that education that like children provide each other, which is
Mhm.
like, hey, like it's okay that you don't know the rules. It's okay
Mhm. Mm.
to share.
But these are the rules.
These are the rules. And like, I'm going to teach you those rules,
And if you want to play,
better play the game.
mhm.
Like how often, I mean, like kink and sexuality or kink and sex, I think obviously have like this very obvious intersection.
Mhm.
Uh, but it's amazing to me how often the game that I am teaching men in the dungeon is consent and the rules of consent. And it's for so many of them the first time that they've had the rules of the game explained to them,
Apply to them.
where a lot of them, I'll be like, okay, so when they come to me, they're like, I'm interested in exploring this, I'm interested in doing this. I'm like, okay. And then I will usually ask them, like, what is your experience level and what are your thresholds? I
Mhm.
whatever you want. I want you to do everything. I want you to go as hard as you can.
No, you don't.
That's not how it works.
Mhm.
Part of the reason why you're coming to me is because I am a professional consent practitioner. You know, like my job is to insulate the experience, the game with consent. And so I'm going to offer you a safe word and then I'll
Mhm.
take you all the way to the edge. But the rule of the game is that when you are reaching your threshold, you now have a way of exiting the game or changing the rules of the game in the middle of the game.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
well, if we're doing like a flogging scene,
Mhm.
I will go as hard on you as I can up until you tell me you have met your threshold.
Mhm.
Someone like, oh, this is my safe word, this is my threshold, is not so different from in a situation where, you know, just sex is being practiced. Um, Telling someone like, I actually don't want to go any further than this, or I want to pivot and do this instead. And I think for a lot of men, that is the first kind of proverbial sandbox wherein that has been explained to them. And it's very sad and simultaneously upsetting to realize, like, okay, so you're an 86-year-old man
Oh.
and you're learning what consent is for the first time right now. How many women have you now been intimate with that you were not practicing this with them? And how many times have you yourself been in sexual situations where you did not feel comfortable offering these kind of
Yeah.
verbal and physical pivots?
Yeah. 100%. Dude, you nailed it. I love that you tied it back to the sandbox because I do find it fascinating. Like the more therapy I've done, the, it's kind of crazy how much more simple it is. Like sometimes it's like, oh my God, like it's kind of annoying actually. It's kind of like, really, that's it? It's just that's so like that feels like so like no duh, right? But like yeah, it all goes back to basics, I feel like. And it's those things that we tell ourselves as kids that kind of seep into our lives as adults. And we need to, like, hopefully teach our kids better things.
Yeah. I think to all the way back to that and to what some of the excellent points our friend Rachel has made.
I know, I love it, Rachel.
Um,
We listen.
yes, that I think is where, unfortunately, so many of us were failed by our parents, especially in our generation, mothers and fathers, is that in the same way that these like men I work with in the dungeon have never had the rules explained to them, we never had the rules explained to us.
Right.
And by nature of being women, um, I think that when we're playing games without rules, men, as those who in a patriarchal society are so often given control or the arbiter of the like games of intimacy that we play with one another,
Mm-hmm.
we're relying on them to make the rules in the game itself. as the game is happening, not realizing that there are very clear universal rules that dictate how you should treat people and how you should be treated in an intimate encounter. And so, like, I wish instead of being so focused on appearances, my mom had been more focused on like telling me the rules of the game, not
Mm.
thinking that by doing so, she was going to like in some way manifest that as a reality in my life. Like teaching kids about consent does not turn your kids into sexual deviants. It gives them the tools that they need to speak from a place of like
Knowledge, like
knowledge
understanding.
when those situations arise. And I think, unfortunately, like you and I are perfect examples of like why that education, in ways that are age appropriate, obviously, needs
Mhm.
to happen sooner rather than later, because we do not have control over when the young people in our lives are exposed to dangerous and predatory adults who are going to weaponize the fact that they don't know the rules of the game against them by nature of their age.
Well, and so I think that that goes back to I I wanted to the one thing that you said stuck out to me was that like your mom like avoiding those things and not acknowledging those things in an effort to like not make them a reality. I think it just is I think it's a really interesting thing that like a lot of I think women almost in a way like they have to tell themselves that they have some control in a society where they really don't, right? And where is the place that a woman has the most control? The home, at least for now, right? Like, it's their kids because that's, you know, we get it. Like, that's kind of like where we're at right now, okay? And like, when that's kind of the role women have taken on. Um, I think what happens, and you tell me if I'm correct, like, tell me if I'm way off here, but I think what happens is that because like they can't admit to themselves that they lack that control. So they can't teach you those rules because they can't even acknowledge that they're being applied to them, right? So not only can they not teach you, but what they're trying to do, I think, and this is how they kind of like moralize it, I think, but they're trying to insulate you from what they perceive as wrong. Like I think my mom would be like the bad like kids that weren't going to church or whatever, or like, but like they try to prevent you from having contact with that so that they can kind of create the life for you that they think you should have versus allowing you to live your own life.
And what I think is so disturbing, such a disturbing undercurrent of what you just said, is that hyper focus on that specifically is so revealing of the fact that it's very likely that they themselves were never taught the rules of the game.
And that's like the thing where I have a yeah, I know 100%. That's like why I have a hard time sometimes because like I have a lot of feelings of anger and frustration and like betrayal for a lot of things. But then I look at some of the things and it's like, I can see how she got there. Not that that makes it okay, but it just like, it's heartbreaking, to think about how that cycle really does just continue to
Yeah.
spiral through generations.
Yeah. And then to go like all the way back to uh, the little tidbit of gossip that we started this conversation with
Oh,
this
yeah.
friend of mine, when we had the discussion about the fact that her husband had purchased this act from her, it
I
was
can't imagine.
not on her radar that she had been assaulted. Because if she did not consent to the sex act itself, with
Mm-hmm.
being coerced by nature of the money that was
Mm-hmm.
for the sex act itself,
Mm-hmm.
would not have consented to the sex act. The money does not create consent.
Right.
The money creates a justification for the violation of consent.
100%. And we as a society have placed, have taught and have been conditioned to place money and status above, all, like, I just find that like we've kind of put that at a high value, when I know a lot of dumb people that have a lot of money, okay? Like,
Yeah, and I think that that's like that is where then the educational aspect becomes so important. Is like, a lot of these men will come to me and they'll be like, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And I'll be like, well, that's not a service I offer. And they'll be like, yeah, but like, I'll pay you.
you, you work for me.
And I'm like, you can't purchase my consent.
Well, and isn't that, sorry, that just made me think of like the customer is always right, because like I think in a lot of ways, like with I'm not working now, but when I was working, there is a sense of entitlement to like, well, I'm paying you, so you're going to do what I want you to do, versus like, I have these funds, what can I purchase from you as a service?
And Rachel called this out, the social currency of a relationship, very similar in this, if not identical, in the sense that it's like, because there is this social currency between two people by nature of being in a marriage or a relationship, that also, you cannot purchase consent with social currency. You,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like, we're in a relationship, so I automatically get to like take this thing or have this thing. It is, to your point, a menu.
But
Regard
how many girls are trained to, and I know for me, like this is actually very recent for me to like that I'm unpacking this. I think the message that I absorbed growing up was that like men have needs and they need to obviously take care of those needs. And that's essentially like my job as a wife, future wife, would be to take care of those needs for my husband so that he wouldn't have to seek those, solutions elsewhere.
yeah.
Right? I'm talking about cheating, right? But like, I think it's so sick that like, as a kid, a literal kid, I was thinking about how I should always be sexually available to my hypothetical future husband that I hadn't even met, so that he wouldn't potentially cheat on me with another person.
And what's equally, if not more disturbing, is that the lesson that you learned by nature of that form of indoctrination was in no way specific to how you identify and speak to your needs
Because it was never about my needs.
or about your needs. And now I'm like realizing, we had this conversation the other day about how in this chapter of life, after we've had all of this like therapy, coming to realize like, as like two women who for so much of our lives have been like down to clown, like horny girls. That's not to say that we're not still, but like realizing like, oh,
We love sex.
yeah, like, we love sex. We've had a lot of sex. But I need so many of these other things that like I think we all as like women need, which is,
Mhm.
I need emotion, I need consistency, I need concern,
Mhm.
I need like nurturing.
I need compassion. I need like consideration.
For this
Also, I
oil,
really,
have needs as well.
what? You're not just a vessel for my cum? Shoot, I thought dang it. No, but I think I really quick, just because Rachel mentioned again, did they teach the boys to not cheat? I love that you said that because that's exactly the point. Is no, they don't teach the boys not to cheat because it's not the boys. They remove the responsibility from boys because they say they make it like they teach boys that they have these desires and that they have these needs, right? And that it's the women around them, it's their job to police themselves so that the boys don't have bad thoughts or think inappropriate things. They don't ever teach the boys that like, hey, those thoughts are normal, but like it's not the women's responsibility to fix your messed up brain. right? Like, and so what it does is it makes it really is like I think emasculating for men to be told that they don't have control over themselves, that they can't help it, they just have to stick it in. Like, you know, and we're here having a manliness crisis or something.
Yeah, I agree heartedly. I think that's such an astute observation to say, okay, well, on one hand, you're told you're supposed to completely control society. That's like your job.
Hmm.
You can't
But you
control.
can't even control yourself, your sexual urges.
Yeah. If you guys have a hard time with control, maybe you guys shouldn't be in charge.
Maybe, maybe there's a thought. There's a thought I can get behind.
I know that we tried to commit to like 45 minutes to an hour here, so I just want to bring us to kind of our final lap. Is there anything else that you wanted to share? Is there anybody else in the chat that has something that they would like to contribute before we conclude today?
I think I love this whole conversation. I think this I'm really excited for this month to go on because I think we're going to really get into this even deeper, and there's so many nuances and there's so many things that we can dive into and explore. I'm excited. So I think this is a good first foray into this month.
Yeah, I want to just say a quick thank you and like a round of applause for our contributor Rachel today. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you for all. We don't ever apologize for being chatty.
Yeah,
Okay, we are the chattiest chatters boxes ever.
and we hope that like as other people see the ways in which we will continually involve those who tune in this conversation, that other people will feel inspired to do so as well. Like we've said, ultimately, like this is not just a space for us. Like we want this to be a space for everybody, for men and women who are interested in exploring some of these like intersections, or the intersectionality. I think of like gender and sexuality, and how we can like better practice some of these principles of just like self affirmation and community support and consent and
And how we can navigate this world that we live in, that this is the reality of the world that we live in, and how do we as women, or men too, but like how do we navigate that in a way that is true to who we are as people and keeps us safe.
yeah, yeah. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for your great brain as usual.
I love your brain and your face.
Hey, everybody. Well, we will be optimistically posting a reminder for everybody on Monday. So, tomorrow, for this next week's topic. Again, we will be meeting on Sundays at 12 o'clock Eastern Time.
Pacific, 12 o'clock Pacific time, 1 o'clock Mountain time, 2 Central, and then 3 o'clock Eastern. Okay, that's it.
Um, and yeah, if anybody has any like questions or discussion topics, those who are tuning into this later, who watch this later, please feel free to drop those in the comments below. We'd love
Please.
feedback. And if you would like a notification of when future conversations are going to happen, each of the Monday posts will have a calendar and a timer embedded in them. So you can set that up and tune in.
Because Liz is amazing and did that. Okay, you guys, Liz is so cool. She can do technology and she set all that up, and I just think we should acknowledge how great she is. Okay. So we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time. And thank you all for tuning in. I love you.
Love you. Bye.